telling you that we've got all kinds of documented, court-certified, bona fide, issues with Christopher Chestnut, and even the Tallahassee Reports goes into that. So the Tallahassee Reports is writing in this report that in 2017, Letman Hicks was an officer in P&P Communications, along with Andrew Gillum, and in 2017, P&P Communications collected rent payments from Gillum's Florida gubernatorial campaign, and Tallahassee Reports reported that the company paid Gillum $71,000. So there you go. Isn't that interesting? I'm just going to read it and let you make up your mind about it. So you've got a company that is Gillum is renting from, which is his own company. Christopher Chestnut, who's the lawyer and childhood friend of Gillum's, and one Cynthia Chestnut, whom I'm going to cover here and again in a moment, because of some local things that are happening with her and the Chestnut family. You know, she is the godmother of one Andrew Gillum. Now, the Miami Herald reported in 2018 that Chestnut, quote unquote, and I like this verb, has tangled with the Florida bar several times since he began practicing law. And it's worser than that since 2018. He pled guilty to a bar violation in 2015 for failing to inform a client on a wrongful death claim and was publicly reprimanded, though the bar dropped the complaints. Now here we go. This is the issue I want to, this is why I'm tying this in with SMOLLET. Okay, obvious parallel is both are people of color. That's the way we say these things now, people of color, Christopher Chestnut and SMOLLET, and things seem to get dropped. So for a scoundrel like Chris Chestnut, the bar dropped complaints that included improper solicitation of clients and making, are you ready for this, false statements in court. Now, I just want to let that seep in for you. You will not hear this or read this anywhere locally in the Mexican Sun. So you tune in the Ward Scott Files, you share it among your friends, and you also go back and you take a look at it again at the wardscottfiles.tv, because this is just the way we work. And this is of interest to us because we think there's a lot of fraud everywhere, and there is a different sense of justice for the elected and the connected. And what makes you connected now is to be a person of color. It seems as if it comes up that way quite often. And at some point here in the future, we're going to present for you documentation that would make you believe that that is leaning that way. So the bar dropped complaints that included improper solicitation of clients, and boy, was that ever a biggie. We've got a lot of stuff locally on that. Making false statements in the court. Now, you know, when you have a liar making, and there's my good buddy Maurice T. McDaniel, you know, go see him. He's a good pal of mine. He's up in High Springs. You need some help. But when you start making false statements as an attorney to the court, and you get away with that, I guess all the liars get together and protect the liars. And I learned a long time ago you don't want to play doubles tennis against two lawyers, because one will call the ball out when it was in, and the other will swear to it. That was one of the standing jokes we had on the tennis court. Never play doubles against two lawyers. So as a result of this, you can't really say as a result, but somewhere coincidentally, one Christopher Chestnut, who used to practice law in Gainesville, moved the firm to Atlanta, which now we understand that shingle's been closed up. He also has 2 disciplinary actions against him still pending with the Florida bar, and all that stuff is still pending with the Florida bar. And we'll keep you posted on that when something breaks. But Sean Pittman, who owns the Pittman Law Group, so writes the Tallahassee Reports, has been a business associate, donor, and friend to Gillum for a number of years, and he's also been mentioned in several reports involving the FBI investigation into Tallahassee corruption. Now, all this is pretty well known to us. Why isn't it known to the sheriff of Alachua County? I don't understand that, and a lot of people have asked me about it, and I don't really know what to say about it. I mean, is it just because it's a Democrat endorsing a Democrat, a Gainesville-alien endorsing a Gainesville-alien? I mean, when there's all this questionable legal behavior surrounding the name Gillum and Chestnut. So, you know, these things come up again and again and again, independent of our investigations. The FBI gets involved in this, as you know. Now, Pittman was on the Costa Rica trip, according to the Tallahassee reports, who's now on to all this and investigating this. And we stay in good touch with Tallahassee reports. The same information has been fed over to the Gainesville Sun by our instigator, and you don't get it. It doesn't get out. So you can talk about fake news, or you can talk about news that's not fake, but it's just not complete, however you want to term it. And you wouldn't know the difference if something was there on the desk of an editor that never appeared, because you wouldn't know in the first place it was there on the desk of the editor. So this guy Pittman was on the Costa Rica trip with Gillum. Now that's a focus of a Florida Commission on Ethics hearing. Now we want to keep you up to date on that. That ethics hearing is scheduled to begin on April 23rd. So if the good Lord's willing, the creeks don't rise, we'll be back here on April 23rd in the man cave watching this to see how that ethics commission. Now I've long been skeptical about any teeth in an ethics complaint. I don't know if maybe it's a slap on the wrist, maybe it's a fine. I don't know if there is such a thing as ethics in politics. But nevertheless, we have these ethics commissions, and there is a formal complaint there. Now, meanwhile, the reason we keep an eye on this is because Gillum recently announced he was creating this voter registration group, which called Bringing Home Florida, and he's aiming to sign up 1 million new voters. He wants to flip Florida blue. Somebody needs to get in there with a Sherlock Holmes magnifying glass and make sure all those voters are really citizens and they're actually registered and they're not convicted felons. And this whole thing about restitution for felons at the Florida legislature, I think, is rightfully saying is, okay, you can vote if you get your rights restored as a felon, but you got to pay back that which you stole. And that just seems to be reasonable. Why would you let anybody get off scot-free, without, paying what you owe before you get to go play, a ticket to the dance? And that's riping, oh my golly, you didn't give them blanket, you didn't give them blanket freedom. Well, what about the people who got ripped off? I mean, who made up their loss? So we're going to keep an eye on one Andrew Gillum for you, and we're going to keep a suspicious eye on Andrew Gillum because it's it is what it is. Now, unbelievably, I want to get this to you. Andrew Gillum, and this was sent to me by one of the research team members. Thank you very much, you guys out there who send me things. And this is from the Gainesville Regional Utilities. You won't believe this. You'll have to fall off your chair. But GRU, whom has all these captive customers, okay? These captive customers, and GRU, believe me, you talk to anybody who's in commercial business around here and let them ask you what they think about commercial rates from GRU, and ask them how they stay in business and just how much they can pass along to the customer and not have the customer leave. So we know that there's stress all over the place on these utility rates here. And take a look at the restaurant business, for example, and keep track on how many go out of business. It's pretty tough to make it in the restaurant business. We've got some very good advertisers here with us on and we support and encourage that you go to these restaurants. We got Gators Dockside, we got Keith Miller's place there, and we've got a bunch of others up there that'll flip up here in a minute. And we really ask that you go to see those guys and patronize them because they help us keep all this message coming to you. And particularly Big Mills there, who's once I turn a bunch of people onto a place, they turn up there in force. So I'm all for helping guys out because they're having to pay these utility rates, and these things are outrageous. So, but this seems to be insult to injury when GRU, now get this, for the annual Brighter Tomorrow Scholarship Banquet. Now see, that's a mouthful, and it's loaded with trigger words that are supposed to endear you to the public. The 2019 keynote speaker is going to be, and you can fill in the blanks here, it shouldn't surprise you at all, is Andrew Gillum. Huh? It's Andrew Gillum. And the 2019 Legacy Award winner, are you ready? Our Charles Chestnut is called Mr. Charles Chestnut. And this is the first time I've ever seen this prefix used with her name, Dr. Cynthia Chestnut. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. Now, why was that piled in there in that little intro by GRU, the doctor? Because this is about scholarships, education scholarships. So we're supposed to be led to believe here that one Cynthia Chestnut is a great teacher and, you know, all this kind of stuff. And you know, I'll just let you, you know, make up your own mind about this and go on with it, and we'll keep an eye on it for you. It's, you know, there's also another character here that we've been watching, that is Ed Jennings. Now, let me give you, you know, Ed Jennings wanted to be a senator, a state senator. He had a father who was one of the persons of color who was a city commissioner. And Ed Jennings went on to try to make a state senator, and he ran against the sheriff and Steve Ulrich and lost. And guess what? Obama gave him a job. And he gave him a job as the director of HUD for the Southeast area. And we immediately ferreted out at a signature loan that Ed Jennings, if I recall correctly, and it took out at one of the banks here and never paid back, and we got that out in the public, and so it got paid back. And anyway, Ed Jennings also owns a shopping center, which is over in northeast area there, and it had in it a library. Now, yes. Now you think about how this happens. How does the county begin to pay rent to Ed Jennings, who is a HUD director of Southeast Regional Area, for a library when all of its libraries, really, with the exception of that one, as I understand it, were freestanding, okay? But so we got into that and started drawing people's attention to that, and sure enough, there was a library that the county built over that area, but meanwhile, the library vacated, so the money rolling in to Ed Jennings as a result of the county being there was vacated, and now this is over in 1130 Northeast 16th Avenue, in case you want to know where that is. There is now some delinquent taxes. Grand total, and this is Ed Jennings, so the taxes aren't being paid, $7,600 and some change on that one. And that is a result of really having the county, having it revealed that the county, if you want to, the taxpayer was really subsidizing the Jennings real estate holdings. And there's a couple of them. Here's another one that is a delinquent, let's see what this is, delinquent sales tax, and it's almost $2,500. So keeping an eye on that character. And I want you to know that these things all have dots. These are all guys who know each other around this area, and you got to keep an eye on them and see exactly what's going down here, because you know you can find yourself in a court and all of a sudden have charges drop or things disappear or stuff sealed, that sort of stuff, and you got a whole nother ball game here. There's also a restaurant that is out at Meadowbrook Golf Course, and it has been ordered, and this is pretty severe. It has been ordered in circuit court by Judge Keim, Circuit Court Judge Donna M. Keim, and this is pretty heavy duty. This is Nola's Cajun Boys and Seafood, and they're going to have to pay into the court $750 on or before Wednesday of every week, beginning on Wednesday, March 27th. So that's today, right? Today is Wednesday, March 27th, and they're going to have to continue to pay that every week until the conclusion of the proceedings here. The restaurant there has not been paying its dues and legal fees, taxable fees and all those sort of things. And so the owner went to court and got a judgment against this outfit called Nola's Cajun Boys, Nolan's Cajun Po' Boys. And I tell you what now, you got to pay the court every week $750. And that's a pretty steep thing to do before you pay your help, before you pay for the food that you're selling. I don't know if that's going to be doable, and if it's not, why the owner of the Meadowbrook Golf Course will get that restaurant back, and another restaurateur will have to come in there. So, it's a tough world, the restaurant business, but at the same time, some do much better job of it than others do. And this also happens to be intertwined with some other things that we've been covering for you. So on top of all that, we've told you about the city commissioner's catering business, and that is Gail Johnson, has a catering business, and we covered that a little bit with you. It's called, and I want to just refresh you before we move on, because the SMOLLET thing has made us re-examine these. There's taxes about about $460 owed, and this is to Delicious Delivered, and this evidently has something to do with Gail Johnson, and she's a city commissioner. Anyway, there you are, friends. It's all out there, and the reason we get that into the public conversation here is we watch to see if the wheels of justice actually do see all these things through to closure. Because people have been asking me all evening and all afternoon about a SMOLLET case, and I've been telling them as honestly as I can, the SMOLLET case is nothing new to us. I mean, we've been seeing this go on for quite a while. It's all sorts of examples of it, and it is what it is, and some things are quite amazing, and one of the things that's quite amazing right now is trying to track, Chris Chestnut. He seems to really be but closely behind him is his buddy, Andrew Gillum. Now, meanwhile, the GRU is going to prop them all up and make them, to somebody like us, that just doesn't sit well. So, I mean, but you wouldn't know it. If we didn't report on it, you probably wouldn't know it. I mean, Gainesville Sun's not going to tell you the truth about it. They're just going to maybe invite you to the GRU thing. I don't know. There's a lot more deserving people out there, trust me, who are unsung heroes who do things in this community, and they're people of color, and they definitely don't ever get recognized, and they're not trying to politicize their behavior and exploit it and take advantage of it. And the most dastardly thing about Christopher Chestnut was him taking advantage of Mr. Baker, and that was discovered by Mr. Baker's son, Tyrone Baker, when Mr. Baker, who was the quadriplegic from the unfortunate accident at work, found that, Christopher Chestnut was really taking advantage of him. And that was, Robert Rush got involved in that and nailed Christopher Chestnut on that one. And you would think that would be enough to get him out of the legal practice. The other individual I want to talk with you about, it's so much fun to talk about, is, of course, now she's become AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and she's in a state of shock right now. The Senate, as you may already have heard, has voted down yesterday the Green New Deal resolution. They voted it down 57 to nothing, with all the Republicans voting against it and the cowardly Democrats voting not present. I tell you what, man, I just tell you what. Does that not bother you? It bothers me. I mean, have the gumption to stand up there and call the thing goofy and put a nail in the coffin of it and move on and come up with something reasonable. But they can't. They have to vote not present, because this is another one of the hoaxes that the Democrats have been perpetrating on the world that we would have gone down the road with had Trump, the white supremacist, not been elected to office. And put a stop to all this stuff, and go back and get on the EPA and stop all their heavy regulations. I was at a cattleman's banquet last night and listened to the keynote speaker talk about agriculture in the state of Florida. Now, let me just tell you, this what I'm about to tell you is going to recap what we're talking about with the Green New Deal. There are three big pressure points on Florida agriculture, and one of them is, of course, population. The people pouring in, and that doesn't take into account the visitors. So the people pouring into Florida to move here and live here are going to need to be fed. So how are we going to protect farmland in Florida At the same time, we accommodate this crowd of people coming here out of these states that have become inhospitable financially, the principal of which is New York, and that whole bunch out there has gone down the tubes, and it's only, and it's ironic that Alexandria Cortez comes from New York when only the rich and famous can afford to live there, and she's from Westchester, and I will assure you, I have been to Westchester many a time and to the Westchester Country Club, and you don't live or hang out there if you got to go out and hold up a sign at the intersection saying, we'll, need money, vet, or whatever it is you write on there. You don't do that. And by golly, you don't do that for sure, even as a homeless guy in the city or in the area of Westchester, New York. So what we've got here in the state of Florida is we've got three pressures. We've got the pressure from population, and we've got the pressure from environmental regulations, which are onerous and illogical in many cases. And the biggest one that gets the bad rap, of course, is Big Sugar. And then, of course, you've got NAFTA. Now, NAFTA is allowing Mexico to dump their vegetables in here at the expense of our farmers here. And, that is undoing our farm. And there's no commodity prices that are worth farming much right now. For example, in cattle, you can't get anything on the pound for the cattle. Yet all the fence posts, all the fencing, all the gas, the diesel, all that other stuff keeps going up. So there's pressure on the farms to go ahead and get out of the way of progress, which is to say to put up yet one more housing development. And then you have to ask yourself, where's the food going to come from? Now, I happen to think that the biggest mistake this country will ever have made and look back on will have been the conversion of its agricultural land into urban land. This country is the best farming land in the world. It has a river tributary system that comes down through the center of the continent and drains it from north to south. It has prevailing trade winds across the continent from the two oceans on both sides. It has a huge, fertile Midwest growth basket that could feed the world. And then, by the way, it gets ridiculed by the Democrats as being full of people who walk on their knuckles, and they want to do away with the Electoral College because they don't want those people who feed the world to have a voice in running the government. I mean, that is nuts, absolutely nuts. But that's where it is right now. With all these urban kids taking it for granted, they can down and get instant gratification by eating something that came out of a machine or was fast cooked, and now their romantic tie with food is to, oh, well, was that the grass-fed beef? Are you kidding me? You got, come on, get your head out of where and get with what's threatening agriculture, particularly in the state of Florida. So you've got the environmental regulations, which are always, and I'm the chair of the Rural Concerns Committee, and one of the things we constantly do here is make sure that the county commission understands when they do something how it affects the rural community. Because there are no rural county commissioners on the county commission, and there never will be, because we don't have anything that's analogous to the Electoral College. All the people are voted into office because of the concentration of the voters in the urban core. And that's what the Democrats would like to do with the national election. They would like to do away with the Electoral College and concentrate the voters on the coasts where all the urban centers are and ignore the farmland that grows the food. And if we have to, turn all the food over to the production of Mexico. I mean, NAFTA was a horrible, horrible deal. In my research class, way back when, I got to say it was in the just before NAFTA, I think, was okayed under Clinton, if I recall. I had students in my research class who wrote research papers, as I've told you before. I taught them to think very, very well and write very, very well. And I remember a young lady who wrote about the disastrous effects on this country that NAFTA was going to have. And everybody sat in the audience and said, well, why isn't anybody else, students, why isn't anybody else listening to this? And I said, listen, they don't want to listen. You only hear what you want to hear. You only see what you want to see. You only believe what you want to believe. That's why a lot of people don't argue with these liberals. You can't discuss anything with them because they're not really interested in tolerance, because if there's tolerance, you have to be able to recognize the merits of your opponent's argument or position. They don't want to do that. And they'll resort to name calling ad hominem, and I can give you examples of it, examples of it, examples of it. There's a young kid who watches here on this show all the time. He's eat up with it. I keep thinking every once in a while he's got some possibilities, and then I see him post something that is just him falling back on his same old style. And he's never going to be a great person. He's never going to be a great thinker. He's never going to be a statesman with that type of attitude. You've got to get out there and be tolerant. And tolerant means bring me your best discussion and I will listen to it with my best ears. And if it's valid and that's the way I taught my classes. So this young lady wrote that NAFTA was going to be a disaster. And I don't know where she is now, what she's doing in life, but she would probably be in her 40s, maybe late 40s. And I always wonder what happens to them. But this deal, these Democrats didn't even have the nerve to stand up and because they're compromised. See, they don't know what to do. They don't know whether to dump AOC or to go ahead and in some portions adopt it, because you see AOC is vocal and draws attention to herself and shames them and calls them old people or old fogies and puts down Pelosi and all of them, and they're intimidated by that because they want to get a hold, if you will, as how we say, get a hold of that young vote, that young impressionable vote. And to try to even get a hold of more of them, they want the vote to be even more impressionable and younger yet and go down to 16. I suppose you go down to 12. Meanwhile, on the other side of the coin, they don't want you to be able to buy a gun. They don't trust you to buy a gun, but they trust you to vote. I don't see how, I don't see how in the world they get away with that, and we've got all kinds of veterans who are coming back from these military assignments, and they can't handle weapons when they get back because, oh my golly, So the examination and the hypocrisy and the duplicity is really nuts. But there are 43 Democrats in this thing who voted present. There were 3 Democrats, Manchin, Sinema of Arizona, and Doug Jones, who voted against the resolution. So applaud them. There was an Angus King from Maine, an independent, also voted with the Republicans. So, and I am proud of McConnell getting this out of the way and bringing it. Let's bring this stuff out right now and, get it out of our system right now. So, of course, Ed Markey, a Democrat of Maine. Maine is just a liberal, I don't know, what do you call it? What do you call these? Landfill. It's just a liberal landfill, okay? It's called a sham, and then, of course, if it had been their gig, they wouldn't have called it a sham. And they're trying to convince you that climate change is a national security, economic, health care, moral issue. It's the biggest one of the time. Meanwhile, we told you yesterday the glacier is getting bigger, not smaller. And so if you don't believe this climate change stuff, you're somehow in denial. But listen, if they're going to have a responsible person offer a responsible plan, I don't know what it would be, by the way, other than turn back the hands of time. And you're not saving the planet. The planet, somebody put this out the other day, I think it's about 5 billion years old. And according to Ocasio-Cortez, if you don't change your ways in the next 12 years, or was it 12 days? I can't remember now. There won't be any planet. No, her thinking is flawed. There will be a planet. There just won't be a niche for mankind. So when she says save the planet, she doesn't mean that. She means try to save the environmental niche for mankind. Let me tell you how the real thinkers say that's going to conclude itself. It will be a plague. The mankind population density, and Florida's a good place to look at it. You're piling up a lot of people here, 30 million or so in Florida. We're going to see some stress here. We're going to see some stress on the infrastructure. We're going to see some stress on all sorts of things that supply the standard of living that you think you take for granted. What's going to happen, according to the guys that I studied with and looked for and found some reasonable discussions with, is that there'll be another plague, and by that we'll mean there'll be, I don't know when it'll be, you see little fits of it with Ebola and that sort of thing. But what will happen is we'll get so much population pressure, and Europe did this with the plague. There'll be so much population pressure in these places that there'll be a cleansing of the human beings, and a lot of them will perish, but some will adapt and survive. and become, you know, stronger and find a way to endure it. And this is a big, huge conversation, by the way. We're not talking about over the next 12 years or 12 days or anything like that. We're talking about what really moves the population on the earth and what comprises the population and you know, what it's made of and all that. That's what we're talking about. We're not taking these little knee-jerk looks like she's taking. So everything is going to be on the line here. True, infrastructure, air travel, you know, all these things are going to be stressed. There's no question about it. But you're going to need to have cooperation. These people who voted not present, they're going to have to get off their derrieres and start participating in some kind of brain conversation to see if they can get off the dime here and stop calling it net zero carbon emissions. It's not that's not going to get it. That's not going to cut it. It's not going to be possible. Net zero carbon emissions is not going to be possible. Now you can do things, and we have done them. This country has done an incredibly good job of addressing its environmental situations. You go down into Mexico, for example, and it's a whole different world. That, you know, I asked when I was down there behind a smoke soot-filled bus, one of the guys who's driving me in the taxi cab, how come you let that happen? And he says, well, somebody gets paid off and therefore the rule doesn't get enforced. You know, this corruption and graft is all over most of the rest of the world. I was talking to a friend of mine who spent a lot of time in Moscow. He was a petroleum agent, and when Russia went capitalistic, they had oil and they wanted to hire as consultants a bunch of guys here who'd been in the oil business here in this country. And my friend was one of the experts who knew all about petroleum, so he was hired and he went to Moscow a lot. And he said, you don't understand it. He says, there are no mortgages. You know, everything, you got to have the money, you just go buy it or you don't get it. And he says, when I went to the bank, the door's locked, and when you go in, they got guys there with machine guns watching you as you go in. You know, and you better have some cash with you if you go in there, or they're not going to let you in there to do any kind of business. The whole place is, you know, the assumptions that the people here make that the rest of the world works the way this place works are nuts. They don't work that way at all. So this Green New Deal, as you know, was introduced by, well, even Pelosi called it the Green New Dream. So, and of course, it's our understanding now that she has lost it. I want to find that conversation if I can, where she said, yeah, here it is, she lost it. Fox News reported this, that, let's see, she said something, yeah, this is it. She ripped Mitch McConnell, and here's what she said. She says she doesn't think that Mitch McConnell wants to save the planet. And as I said, that's a sentimentality. You don't save the planet. The planet will be fine. It's been around here 5 billion years. It's not going anywhere. The planet itself is not going anywhere. So she has said, oh, Mitch McConnell doesn't want to save the planet. And then it's a wonderful quote by this child. He thinks we can all drink oil in 30 years. Now, where does she come up with this stuff? I mean, it's nuts. And she was speaking to a Vox reporter, Ellen Nielsen, and she accused McConnell of rushing a vote and not wanting to take action against climate change, as she said, because he thinks we can drink oil in 30 years when all our water is poisoned. This is the way her brain works. I mean, she's an alarmist, she's an extremist, she's immature, and it's going to be stressful for the Democrats to do something about this, because they're going to have to do more than just vote and not present. So she was complaining that McConnell rushed this bill to the floor without a hearing. That's the way the real shrewd manipulators of the rules of the Senate can do things, and she needs to learn the rules herself. And she's repeated this idea that we'll all be drinking oil and the water will be poisoned. And you've got it.
Smoothies, yum.
Oh, a lot of smoothies, Jay says.
That's one of the comments from Citizens for Trump.
Oh, is it a lot of smoothies? Oh my golly. So anyway, there you are with AOC. She has lost it, my friends. And that was the quote from Fox, that she had lost it. Now, we would be remiss if we didn't go over here and talk about, of course, something, as I say, which is not surprising to us at all, and that there's a different justice for the elected and the connected. But some things I've done and researched, and I'm not the only one. And Breitbart's written about this, Pollock's written about it. I found some other examples. You can Google it. But this woman, Kim Foxx, who is the Cook County State Attorney, she's the one who dropped the SMOLLET case. And she didn't even tell the police and the head of the cops, and she didn't tell the governor. You know, and I suppose in her mind she doesn't have to. I mean, I talked to a lawyer the other day who told me that a victim of sexual, let's put it this way, misconduct by a perpetrator doesn't get a say-so in whether the state attorney drops the case or not. I just think that's unbelievable. But the lawyer I talked to said that's the way it works, because the state attorney doesn't have to go out and talk to anybody and say, well, we better consult with them. No, we don't want to take it up for any number of reasons. Now, generally it's because they can't win it. Here, it was a slam dunk. So why did they drop it? Well, some things are very suspicious. George Soros donated $408,000. I want the local Democrat operatives to comment on this for me, if they will, out on the screen here. George Soros donated $408,000 in 2016 to a super PAC that supported Cook County State's Attorney Kim Foxx. Imagine if that happened around here. Well, if the Democrats did it, it'd be all right. But they're so upset right now that, you know, Anna King didn't get it because some PAC supported Gostin or whatever it was, some outfit. And oh, go grow up. Learn the game, for crying out loud, and quit being, you know, it's okay for you to do it and it's not okay for somebody else to do it. I mean, here's a woman who got, how come she gets $400,000 from nutcase Soros and it's, you know, those kind of things, and all of a sudden that probably never would have come out. That probably never would have come out had she not done this in this shock announcement where she dropped all 16 felony charges against this. He's a left-wing activist, this guy. He is a left-wing. You know, what I also understand is that this woman, attorney for SMOLLET, started text messaging Michelle Obama. And she got either Michelle Obama herself or Michelle Obama's handmaiden, and they asked the handmaiden to intervene, because all these things are tied up. Obama's a Chicago guy, and we know Chicago's as crooked as a dog's hind leg. So this attorney, this liar for SMOLLET, got a hold of Michelle Obama's world, and next thing you know, there's help coming in getting a persuasive discussion going in the ear of Fox from the Obama world to let it go. Well, the guy is this kid is a left-wing activist, and his remarks, which I heard yesterday, was that he was going to continue to be a left-wing activist, and his whole thing that he dreamt up and perpetrated, that was signed, sealed, delivered, and documented in a slam dunk, was a hate crime that intended for Trump to be the object of the hate. So he was going to exploit a feeling that the Democrats are perpetrating as a way of keeping turmoil out there. And now the Justice Department of, if you want to call it that, of Cook County, Chicago, is complicit. All right? And it is going to be interesting, because I'm going to read you something in a minute. It says this is even tied up in the mayor's race. But this Fox woman had formally recused herself from the case in February because she'd spoken with the SMOLLET family. This is all from the Chicago Tribune. And the FBI may still, she got back in it, and this is after supposedly these messages from Obama. Now supposedly the FBI is going to get into some Fed deal, and if the Trumpster comes in here on this and the DOJ, maybe they can, on that mail letter, that threatening letter that came through the United States Postal Service. So this Soros, and we've been covering this dude for a long time, has been spending heavily on backing progressive candidates. So there's your smoking gun. the person of color, when you know that the attorney who dropped these charges, a female, is a person of color, had 400 grand through a PAC pumped into her re-election campaign or election campaign, and then gets on the wire with the Obamas, and the next thing you know, the whole thing is not only dropped, it's sealed and eradicated from the guy's record. There was Fox has run on a platform of criminal justice reform. She ironically told ABC News affiliate WLS7 in 2014 that she wanted to focus on restoring faith in our criminal justice system and bridging the divide between the community and the law enforcement world. And, you know, there's evidence that a politician, this is why politicians have worse reputations than car dealers. And, you know, they will say anything, do anything. Their managers, their consultants will say anything, do anything. That's what this all was with Trump, opposition research paid for by, of course, Clinton, to say anything, do anything, to confuse the American public, which is generally misinformed or underinformed or just plain naive or whatever, you know. It's very, and this more is going to come out on this. I can promise you, just beginning to hear it. But state campaign finance records show that Soros personally contributed a total of $333,000 to Fox's super PAC before the March 15, 2016 primary was over, and an additional $75,000 after she won. So Fox defeated a person named Alvarez in the primary and won the election. And this left-wing billionaire, along with Steyer and some of these people, are always meddling. Now, the Los Angeles Times has reported that Soros is involved in 21, get this now, 21 district attorney races across the country, and is just spending, you know, nobody really knows, nobody's really calculated it up. He's also contributing money to nonprofit organizations. He pumped money into Gillum's campaign up there. He's contributing money to nonprofit organizations that engage in political activities that are not required to report donations. You ask any of these operatives for the Democrat Party about this, and they'll just sweep that under the rug. That's just, oh, well, you do it too. Some stupid thing they'll say like that. So they also wanted to claim that he had previous community service. I think community services for the elected and connected is a joke. I mean, it's just a joke. You don't see them out there picking up paper with a sign on their back that says, you know, I was caught this or that. You know, wouldn't that be something if you had community service where the elected and the connected actually had to go out there and put a homeless and a hungry sign on their back and say, I'm out here picking up paper because I'm paying my community service. No, they don't do that. They, you know, they get some cush community service. I mean, so, I mean, there you are. That's the connection between Soros and Cox. Now, there's also a judge that is worth taking a look at, and the Chicago Tribune has taken a look at this guy. He was involved in this. And I wanted to give you a little history. This goes back to 2016, and this has something to do, see, there are larger issues here than just a Smollett. It has to do with a whole bag of worms in Chicago. There's a Cook County judge that dropped the charges because the cops were driving alongside a car and smelled marijuana and used that as a probable cause to stop the thing. They found a 9mm Glock semi-automatic handgun with 26 bullets in the magazine. I'm not too sure how he did that. He had to get an extended magazine. If he did get an extended magazine, I got a Glock and I ain't got no 26 rounds in it. They carry about 15, and so they went out and got an, you know, so that alone tells you the dude is heavy duty. It turns out he's a drug dealer, of course, and the cops had it right. Okay, and you find 26 bullets in a magazine and another in the chamber, the dude is planning on winning the gunfight. So there's so much gun violence, though, that the court hearing, the cops testified that he and his partner arrested this guy, Mac is his name, in August 2015, and you know he smelled marijuana, and the guy claimed, oh, you couldn't have smelled it. It was not lit. And so guess what the judge does? The judge, Circuit Court Judge Stephen Watkins, discredited the officer's testimony and threw out the evidence and doomed the prosecutor's case. And the judge quipped, I don't think it passes the smell test. So since then, really, the police department's Internal Affairs Bureau has been at war with the judicial system. And I'm going to tell you something. Same thing's going on here in Alachua County. I know a lot of guys, because we have pretty good connections with law enforcement. We don't have such good connection with the judicial system. Some of the judges we do, but not all of them. The cops will tell us that, look, man, we busted our butt, caught the guy red-handed, turned all the stuff over, and it evaporated. We don't have a clue what happened once the state attorney's office got a hold of it. Once William P. and his crowd got a hold, we don't know what the hell happened to it. So, and William P.'s got a reputation for being a liberal, okay, and being soft on crime. And so this is not, the same thing evidently is going on in Chicago. So in that whole cauldron, if you will, of sloppy justice or the elected and the connected, and you've got Soros pumping money in, you've got this Stevens, he's also a person of color, by the way, does that surprise you? Siding with the guys in the car who said you couldn't have smelled marijuana because it wasn't lit. And then the judge really, well, that's been, that throws the whole case into probability, and it's that one and another. And the police department's internal affairs investigated all this and concluded there wasn't enough independent evidence to really substantiate the traffic stop in favor of the cops or against the cops, so it kind of evaporated. And so the reputation that came out of this of the police in Chicago, this was the end result of this. And this is what I think the police chief in Chicago is so upset about. And this has had to be in the police chief's brain when all this was going on, when he got out there and made a public statement about what a horrible deal this was that this kid did and how much of resources it used up for the cops to investigate and everything. The police officers were found by an investigation by the Chicago Tribune, sort of triggered on this thing, to maybe routinely give false information or testimony, but they don't ever get punished for their actions, you see. So this is the position, okay, that I think is the climate in which this thing was dropped. Innocent people this is not going to be new to you. This is the national anthem of the liberals. Innocent people are convicted. The guilty are sometimes allowed to go free, and the criminal justice system is tarnished. That's the whole thing. And in that confusion, throw in the political towel, throw in the outside money, and you've got a failed system. And determining whether an officer lied on the witness stand or simply was mistaken becomes extremely difficult. Extremely difficult. So they have professional standards. Look at what happened in the Cuckoo Lounge here, whatever you call it. I mean, I call it the Cuckoo Lounge now. I mean, nobody's been called on the carpet for all those lousy decisions and convicted felons actually getting a permit, or maybe not, to run this thing with a city commissioner out there who's got a checkered past and, no police protection and people shooting one another and all this kind of jazz. They want a civic center to come to East Gainesville? Are you kidding me? So on top of that, the state's attorney's office will quite often not put any disclosure documents out there. In this case, they have sealed, as you know, they have sealed the whole thing and said, go away, you can't see it, and we've decided on our own. So, there's our theme today, as justice system is politicized. It's not new to us. I mean, it simply isn't new to us. I mean, we've known this for quite a while. That and meanwhile, this SMOLLET insists he's been truthful about his race hate attack. And so this guy's a card-carrying liar because somebody's lying, because the cops investigated this thing and fully convinced and have all the documentation that the guy was lying. So here's what is in. So what we have, the bottom line here, we have a liberal activist with a presidential wife, and at least the presidential wife's handmaiden, getting involved with a person of color attorney who's in office because of a liberal activist contribution of almost $500,000 to a PAC to get the SMOLLET guy off scot-free. And so meanwhile, this has really kind of created a stress point that, you know, you wouldn't think would happen, but the Chicago mayor and the police chief are furious about this. And then just because he gave a $10K bond to the prosecutors and that bought off the charges, basically that's the way to look at it. Once again, the elected and the connected. How many guys down here in the jug right here in Alachua County can take 10 grand and take their bond and just forfeiture to the cops and say, go put it in your kitty over there and let me out? In other words, buy your way out of the jug. So there you are. I don't know if you're surprised by the SMOLLET thing. You probably were. I mean, everybody probably is. They felt at least the guy could have. Now, he's been given credit for whatever mysterious community service he did before, but I mean, who knows? I mean, I think it'll be.
It wouldn't be applied the same way, though, Ward.
Yeah, well.
I have 250 plus hours of community service. Would that count if I did a hate crime against a black guy?
Oh, in other words, you stored up some credits.
Oh, I have credits stored up through the wazoo. But would that help me?
Yeah, so in other words, you haven't done them for any kind of legal transgression. You just do it as a matter of lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
And so you want to know if you could tap into that as a kind of a credit bank if you got crossways in the road with a jug, right?
Right, but it wouldn't happen.
No, it wouldn't help it. Although it seems to have helped it in the SMOLLET case. Exactly what you're talking about. The guy
all that white privilege working for me.
Yeah, you got that white privilege working for you. You got to do something about that, man. So this is on a close on. I think it's kind of funny. I think it's absolutely appropriate given all the miscarriages of justice we've got here. Robert Kraft, our buddy, who is accused of participating in trafficking of women when that wasn't the case at all. He had a consensual relationship with a licensed massage therapist. He is ready to have a jury by trial. He got no problem with it. He was charged with paying for sex acts. I'm not sure if that's what he was charged with. I'd have to see the actual charge. That's what the paper, the reportage, this is the Boston paper, by the way, and the Boston television station saying this. But, Kraft was offered a plea deal. He rejected that. Then he issued an apology. And now he said, hey, bring it on. I'll take a trial by jury. And that would be interesting. I mean, I'd probably tune in to watch that as well.
You know it's a hit.
It's a hit right off the bat. I mean, so maybe he's saying, maybe he's using the elected and connected reasoning. He's certainly connected. He drove up to the place in a Bentley, and the Bentley driver waited outside for him. And Jay, when you get a Bentley, I want you to drive me around, okay? And that was.
I'm not gonna say anything to that.
You're not gonna say.
No, look at the media coverage of this guy. When they talk about Kraft on trial, they're like Trump supporter Kraft on trial.
Right. But they don't. And you notice that's a good point Jay's made. They've downplayed that the hoax crime was a Trump hate crime. You remember it was all about the MAGA hat and all that kind of business. And so now the media has conveniently downplayed, if not completely omitted that. And the other issue is whether or not this SMOLLET should pay back the cops for all the cheese it cost to investigate him. And no, that ain't going to happen. The bottom line, I think, is such a curious question to ask, and has to be asked since he's out there. Obviously, the world is all about him. Is this going to help or hurt his career? And given the Hollywood weirdo behavior of all those people that, I would think in their world it'll help it, because he got away scot-free. He got Obama's intervention. He got a prosecutor who was paid off by Soros. And he's a Trump hater. and he's supposedly going to go out and continue his activism, which means, you know, whatever all that's about, and he's working out of Chicago. I would think he'd be making very soon now the talk show rounds, and he would be, you know, among them a superstar. I mean, and if that turns out to be the case, and we really do have a clear kind of dichotomy here, but this is all in Chicago, and so what I wanted to do is give you some background today on the turmoil in Chicago. And there's one article I didn't even get to right now about how this enters into the mayor's race, and I'll try to bring that up tomorrow, because even that figures into the mayor's race, the position, and it could have all been to get rid of Rahm Emanuel, because, you know, he's coming out on a side antithetical to the Soros people. So, yeah, bring down the empire. Yes, man, Marguerite, bring down the empire. So, thanks so much for listening to the Ward Scott Files. Every day I think, well, that's the end of the news, and I was telling some people last night, before the day's over, something else weird has happened, and we got to come on and help you talk about it and explain it to you. But I wanted to give you from top to bottom today how this resonates here locally with our local characters, and all out even to the state, since you've got Gelman involved in trying to sign up 1 million voters. So you've got local, state, and you've got national, and then you've got all these pockets of this liberal kind of work going on as being financed by outside interests and these left-wing billionaires. So have a great day. This was Trump Wednesday, by the way. We don't call Wednesday Hump Wednesday. We call it Trump Wednesday. So have a great day. Warthog Command Center out.
Thank you. God bless you. And God bless America.
Do you want to put your business in front of 10,000 new customers? Visit wardscottfiles.tv today for more information on our advertising opportunities.